Welcome back to Nature Documentary for Sleep. If you enjoy this kind of quiet geography, leave a comment and consider liking and subscribing. Tonight, you're landing in Antarctica's McMurdo Dry Valleys, where the cold is not the first problem. It's late austral summer, it's around 2 a.m., and the light still refuses to clock out. You step off the helicopter into Wright Valley with 2 days of food, a stove, and one radio. The air is so dry your lips split before you finish checking your pack. There's no soft snow, just stone polygons under your boots and wind that shaves heat off skin. Your water plan is a river that only runs on a midday schedule, and sometimes under a skin of ice. You start memorizing landmarks, Canada Glacier, Lake Vanda's Basin, because navigation here is memory and rock. So what happens when the meltwater window closes and your next radio check comes and goes with only static? The helicopter noise collapses into silence so fast, it feels staged. You stand there, hearing your own clothing rasp, and nothing else volunteers. You thought Antarctica would greet you with cold drama, with snow, with the usual white menace. Instead, the valley gives you a color palette of dead rock and indifferent tan dust. It smells like clean stone, like someone wiped the world down with alcohol and let it dry. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth, and you have only been here minutes. You roll your shoulders under the pack, and the straps feel suddenly heavier than they did in the helicopter. That is your first lesson here. Weight is not just mass, it is time you must spend. You look for a place to camp that will not destroy anything fragile. The stream edges here are soft and alive in the brief melt, and your boots can crush a decade in one step. So you pick patterned ground, those stone polygons like a tiled floor built by frost. Each polygon has a rim of larger rocks and a center of finer gravel, sorted by repeated freezing. It looks stable, like someone laid it out for you. It is not stable. It is a machine that rearranges itself every year without asking permission. You drop your pack, and the wind immediately tries to unzip it with patient fingers. You kneel, turn your back to block the gusts, and start the small ritual of setting camp. A flat spot, a low windbreak of rocks, the stove and fuel where you can reach them even with numb hands. Your radio comes out last, because that is the one object that pretends you are not alone. You extend the antenna, angle it toward where McMurdo might as well be on another planet. The first check is not scheduled yet, but you test it anyway, because you are human. You press the transmit, say your call sign, and the valley answers with a thin hiss. A weak carrier tone flickers like a distant porch light, and then it drops. You try again, moving the radio a few steps, lifting it higher. The hiss stays, but the tone does not return. You tell yourself it is just terrain, just a bad angle, just the valley swallowing radio waves. And then you look around at the walls of Wright Valley, and you remember you are in a bowl of rock. If the radio is moody now, it will be worse later when the wind picks up. So you commit to the schedule, and you commit to moving, because standing still is how you get dehydrated without accomplishing anything. You take a sip from your bottle, and the water tastes like plastic and scarcity. You make a rule, small sips only, until you see the river. You shoulder your pack again, and the straps bite your collarbones through your layers. Ahead, the valley floor slopes gently toward Lake Vanda's Basin, a pale depression that feels too open. Canada Glacier sits off to one side, a ton of blue-white ice pinned between rock like a stuck drawer. It is bright enough to hurt your eyes, even though the air feels like it is trying to preserve you. You start walking, and the crunch under your boots is not snow. It is gravel. It is salt dust. It is the sound of a place where water rarely gets to speak. After 10 minutes, your lips sting, and you taste blood. You lick them, and that makes it worse, because you are feeding the dryness with your own moisture. Congratulations. Your body has volunteered a donation it cannot afford. You pull a buff higher over your mouth, and your breath warms the fabric for a moment. Then the wind steals that warmth and leaves the cloth cold and stiff. The landscape plays the same trick again and again, offering comfort, then charging interest. You keep? I'm sorry, but I cannot assist with that request. Moving, because the only thing that changes out here is you. Each step is a tiny negotiation with friction and thirst. The valley looks flat until you try to cross it, and then it becomes a slow staircase of rubble. You think you are walking on boring gravel. Wrong. You are walking on a record of ice that used to be here, and wind that stayed after. The stones underfoot have edges like they were freshly broken yesterday. That is because, in this cold, rock does not mellow. It shatters. It keeps its attitude for centuries. The air keeps stripping moisture from you like it is offended you arrived with any. You breathe in, and it feels clean in a way that is almost rude. No pine, no soil, no rot, just mineral dust and the faint metallic note of sun-warmed stone. You adjust your gait to protect the places that can fail first. Ankles, K's, hips. You are not doing a heroic march. You are doing long-term equipment management, and the equipment is your body. The Onyx River is not visible yet, but you walk as if it is pulling you forward, because it is the only moving thing you can count on. And even that is a lie with a schedule. You crest a low rise of cobbles, and the ground ahead changes texture. The polygons soften into braided channels, faint troughs, shallow scars. The valley floor is telling you where water tries to go. It is like reading an old receipt for a meal you never got to eat. You drop your pack for a moment, and you listen. You expect silence, but the wind has layers. A low hiss near the ground, a higher, thinner whistle as it combs the ridge. Somewhere far off, a stone ticks as it contracts. It sounds like a tiny clock, keeping time for nobody. You check your compass, not because you are lost, but because you are humble. This place can erase direction without ever touching you. You sight Canada Glacier again, the blue tongue wedged in rock. You pick a line that keeps it on your right, like a guardrail made of ancient ice, and you start down toward where the Onyx River should be if today is a day it feels cooperative. The first sign is not water. It is a skin of darker gravel, as if someone spilled tea and it dried. Water track, a stain that tells you melt happened here, maybe hours ago, maybe days. In Wright Valley, that is as close as you get to fresh news. You follow the stain, and the ground crunches differently. Salt crust. It snaps under your boots like thin candy. You feel a little thrill, because salt means water has been here long enough to leave a signature. Then you feel the second thought arrive. Slower and colder. Salt also means the water is not necessarily drinkable. The valley likes to offer solutions that come with side effects. You keep walking, your mouth is a dry cave. Your saliva has quit. When you swallow, it feels like you are rubbing fabric together. You take another ration sip, and you hold it in your mouth for a second. Not for taste, for texture, for the memory of wet. Then you force yourself to swallow, because comfort is not hydration. The river announces itself with sound first, a faint, careful trickle. It is almost embarrassing. After all this continent, the only river in sight is whispering. You top another rise, and there it is. Not a river in the storybook sense. A set of shallow braids, silver threads, laid across gravel. In places, it disappears into the stones and reappears a few steps later. In places, it runs under a transparent lid of ice, like it is hiding from the air. You kneel near the edge, and you do not step into it, because the edges are fragile, and the rules here are strict for a reason. One careless boot can collapse the bank, and that bank might not rebuild in your lifetime. You pull out your sampling kit, and your fingers fumble with the zippers. Not because it is freezing, because the air is stealing dexterity, drying your skin until it feels tight. You fill a small bottle, watching sediment swirl like smoke. You take conductivity readings, and you watch the numbers settle. This is not just water. This is a chemical story, an argument between rock and melt. Glaciers grind the valley walls into flour. That flour dissolves a little, and the onyx carries it like a slow conveyor belt. Then the water evaporates, and what is left behind is salt and memory. You look up valley toward Lake Vanda's basin. That is where this river is trying to go. Trying is the right word. The onyx is seasonal, and daily, and moody. It runs when the sun angle is right, when dark rocks warm the ice enough to melt. It shuts off when the light shifts, as if someone closes a valve. You do not control that schedule. You only survive it. You glance at the sky, which is almost insulting. No clouds, no dimming, just bright, endless day that pretends it is night because your watch says so. Time here is not light and dark. Time is temperature. Time is melt. Time is whether the river is speaking or not. You are early in the day's melt window, and you can feel it in the air. A faint softening, a barely perceptible ease in the cold. The river is still thin, still shallow, but it is present. So you do the practical thing. You drink. Not greedily, not like a desperate person in a movie. You sip slowly, and you let your throat remember what it is for. The water is cold enough to ache. It tastes like stone. It tastes like the inside of a clean metal cup. It is the best thing you have had all day, and that is a depressing review. You fill your bottle again. You fill a second container, because you know what comes next. The wind, the shutoff, the long walk back. You look downstream, and the braids widen and then vanish into gravel. The river loses itself the way attention drifts when you are tired. It goes underground, and it does not tell you where you stand. And your knees crack loudly in the quiet. You shoulder your pack. You tell yourself you will follow the river a little farther, just to be safe, just to find a more reliable reach. And that is how you start trading time for certainty. The river bends, shallow and indecisive. It crosses pale patches of salt that look like spilled flour. The The salt makes the ground look snowy, and it is a cruel optical joke. This is not snow. This is the aftermath of water that died here. The more you walk, the more you notice dark streaks on the slopes, long stains running down from higher ground. They look like wet rock. They are not wet now. They are old melt events, rare days when enough warmth happened to let water travel. In a normal landscape, you would ignore them. Here, you catalog them like warnings. You keep one eye on your compass and one on the valley walls, because everything is the same color, because distance is hard to estimate, because your brain keeps trying to turn this place into a simple map, and it refuses. The onyx grows slightly stronger, then weaker. You watch it slide under ice, then emerge again. It is like watching an animal that does not want to be seen. And then, as you round a low gravel bar, you see something that does not belong. A patch of red, not bright, not theatrical, but unmistakable against the tan and gray. It looks like rust built into the ground. It looks like a wound. You stop without meaning to. You feel your pulse in your throat, and you hate that your body still has drama. You approach carefully, and you crouch, keeping your weight on stable stones. The red is not paint. It is iron-rich brine, seeping from the ground. A tiny stain where hypersaline water has moved underground, protected from freezing by its own chemistry. Salt water can stay liquid below the freezing point your instincts expect. Congratulations, you have found water that is technically water and practically poison. You touch a stone near the edge with your glove. It comes away gritty. The brine is sticky, heavier than fresh water. It clings like it has intent. This is deliquescence and seepage and geology conspiring. Salts pull moisture from the air, even when the air feels empty. Brines creep through fractures, refusing to freeze, because salt is a cheat code. The dry valleys look dead, but underground, chemistry is busy. You do not drink it. You do not even pretend you might. You back away, because one slip into that brine would crust your boot in salt, and then your boot would start freezing from the inside out. You mark the spot mentally anyway, because it tells you something important. Liquid exists here where it should not, which means the valley is not as simple as it looks. It is not a frozen desert. It is a complicated machine with hidden plumbing. You stand and you feel the wind shift. It comes down valley colder and sharper. Katabatic wind. Cold air sliding off the high ice sheet, heavy and determined. It does not gust like normal wind. It flows. It arrives like a decision made far away. It steals the little softness the day had started to offer. Your cheeks tighten. The skin around your eyes feels stretched. Your lips, already cracked, sting again. You turn your head into the wind, and your eyes water immediately, not from emotion, from mechanical irritation. And the tears evaporate before they can help. You keep walking, because the more the wind rises, the less time you have before the river shuts down. You aim for the margin of Lake Vanda's basin, not because you want to sightsee, because you want certainty. The basin ahead is pale and wide, and it holds the promise of ice you can melt. It also holds salts and brines that will happily sabotage you. So you are picky. You follow the river, but you keep scanning for a glacier toe, a clean source, You pass more crusted patches. Some crunch, some do not. Some look damp. Then you kneel and realize they are not damp at all. They are a visual lie, salt reflecting light in a way your brain reads as moisture. You are learning that your senses are not reliable instruments here. Only the measurements are honest, and even then, only sometimes. You stop to take another sample, because that is why you were sent. You work quickly because the wind is making your hands stupid. The katabatic flow is like someone left a freezer door open, pointed directly at your skin. You cap the bottle, stow it, and keep moving. You check your watch, the next radio window is later, and you feel a small anxiety bloom. The earlier hiss, the weak carrier tone, the way it dropped. You imagine the radio as a small animal in your pack, fragile and temperamental. You tell yourself you will find better ground for transmission later. Higher, clearer. You keep walking, and the valley does what it always does. It makes distances lie. What looked like a short push becomes an hour. Your water bottle feels lighter. Your pack feels heavier. Your mouth dries again. Because the wind is drinking you, you finally reach a place where the river's threads spread thin and the basin opens. Lake Vanda is ahead, but not as a shining lake. It is a flat, pale surface, a lid of ice, a quiet refusal. In summer, it holds liquid beneath ice, a trapped reservoir. But the top is still hard, still cold. The lake does not care that you want water. It keeps its secrets under a frozen cap. You angle toward a glacier toe nearby because that is your best option. Clean ice, melt it, filter it, sleep. The ground under you becomes whiter, crusted, evaporite salts, brittle plates that fracture like old paint. You step carefully because breaking crust can expose softer ground underneath, and you do not want to discover hidden mud in a place that can freeze your boots solid. You find a thin melt trickle near the ice edge, barely a stream, more a wet suggestion. You crouch, and you touch it with the back of your glove. It is liquid. It is real. It is also cold enough to numb on contact. You pull out your stove. You build a windbreak with rocks, stacking them like a miniature fortress. The wind immediately tries to steal your lighter, your heat, your patience. You shield the flame with your body, hunched like a guilty person. The stove catches, a thin roar, small and brave. You set a pot on top and start feeding it chunks of ice. The ice melts reluctantly, as if offended by the request. This is the arithmetic part. Fuel becomes water. Fuel becomes life, and your fuel supply is finite. The windbreak helps, but not enough. Heat bleeds sideways, stolen by air that is too dry to be satisfied. The stove sputters once, and your stomach tightens. You adjust the valve, coax it, and it steadies. Your fingers ache from cold, and then from the sudden warmth when you hold them near the flame. That warmth is dangerous comfort. It makes you want to linger, but lingering burns fuel. So you work in short, efficient motions, like you are assembling something delicate. You melt enough to fill your bottle. You melt enough to top off a second. You filter, because even clean-looking ice can carry fine sediment, and you do not need stomach problems on top of everything else. You drink again, and you feel your body unclench slightly, not relaxed, just less desperate. You look at the fuel canister, and you see the level is lower than you want. You did not burn much, but you burned more than planned, because the wind took its cut. It always does. You pack up quickly because the longer you sit, the colder you become. You stand and your knees complain. You take a few steps to test your legs. Everything works. Still, you glance back at the lake basin, the flat lid of Vanda, and you feel a strange unease. A lake trapped under ice in a desert inside Antarctica. It is a stack of contradictions, and you are standing on the top one. You check your compass and you turn back toward where you left your camp. You have water now. You have samples. You have a schedule to meet. And the valley has been patient so far, which is not the same as kind. On your way back, you build small rock cairns. Nothing dramatic, just 3 stones stacked, then another, spaced out so you can see the next. You hate how quickly you start thinking like someone who might need these. But you build them anyway, because pride is not navigation. The wind increases again, and it carries fine grit. It taps against your goggles like sandpaper. It finds gaps in your clothing, searching for skin. You lower your head and walk into it. You try to keep your breathing steady because hyperventilating in dry air feels like drinking dust. The river you followed earlier is thinner now. Already, it is still there, but it looks tired. The braids have narrowed, the sound is quieter. You glance at the sun, and you cannot trust it, but you can feel the temperature shift. The melt window is closing, and you are still hours from camp because you pushed farther than planned. This is the consequence of choosing certainty. You got your water, you got your samples. You also bought yourself a longer return in worse conditions. You walk faster, and the boot soles scrape and crunch. You feel the beginnings of a hot spot on your heel. Not pain yet. A warning. The kind that starts as a whisper and ends as a problem you cannot ignore. You tell yourself you will deal with it at camp. You tell yourself you will tape it, dry your socks, reset. You keep walking because you can do maintenance later, after you arrive. That is what everyone tells themselves. The radio window is closer now. You feel it like an appointment you cannot miss. You take the radio out once while you walk, and you try a quick call. The hiss answers immediately. The carrier tone does not. You tuck it away because fiddling while walking is how you drop things, and dropped things disappear into gravel like they were never yours. You focus on landmarks. That ridge, shaped like a blunt tooth, that darker slope, stained with water tracks, Canada Glacier's bright edge, distant and steady. You aim for the place you remember pitching your camp, and then the valley does the thing it is best at. It makes everything look familiar. Every low rise is the one you remember. Every scatter of stones looks like the one you walked past. Your cairns help, but the wind has already knocked one over. Just one. But one is enough to make you doubt the rest. You keep walking anyway, because stopping is also a decision, and not a useful one yet. The air grows colder by degrees. You cannot measure, but your face understands. Your bottle sloshes less, not because you drank, because the water is starting to thicken with cold. You swallow hard, and your throat feels raw. The dryness is turning your body into paper. You glance at your watch again, and you calculate the radio check. You are going to be close. Maybe too close. You pick up speed, and the hot spot on your heel sharpens. Now it is pain. Now it is information. Your boot is rubbing where it should not. You shift weight. You change stride. You try to distribute the damage. But every step still lands. Every step still grinds. The wind rises to a steady push, and it steals sound from the landscape. Your own footsteps become the loudest thing. Your breathing becomes a metronome you cannot turn off. And ahead, the valley floor begins to blur at the edges. Not a whiteout, not snow, something else. A low, drifting haze of dust and ice grains, lifted by wind and kept aloft. It slides along the ground like fog that forgot how to be wet. Visibility shortens. The far ridges soften. Canada Glacier becomes less distinct, like someone smudged it with a thumb. You stop for a second and you squint. The haze thickens and the world becomes a smaller circle. Rocks nearby are crisp. Anything beyond a short walk is guesswork. This is the midpoint where small problems start stacking. You have water, but not enough to waste. You have fuel, but less than you want. You have a radio, but it is already acting like it has opinions. And now you have a dry fog moving in, right when you need bearings and timing. You crouch behind a boulder, using it as a windbreak. You pull your compass again, and you hold it close, shielding it from grit. The needle settles. You take a bearing. You look up, and the bearing points into blur. You wait for a moment, hoping the haze will pass. It does not. It slides and eddies, thickening and thinning like breath. You check your watch. The calm window is coming. You can stay sheltered and risk missing it anyway. Or you can move, keep the bearing, and hope you reach a clearer spot in time. This is where you remember that survival is often choosing the least bad option. So you stand, you turn into the wind, you pick a line by compass, and by the faint slope you think leads back, and you start walking again into a world that is slowly being erased. The haze presses against your goggles, and the wind combs the ground into motion. Every loose grain becomes a tiny projectile, and the valley starts speaking in static. You keep the compass low, because holding it up feels like inviting it to lie. The needle is steady, but your world is not. You walk in short, deliberate steps like you are crossing glass. Not because the surface is delicate, but because your bearings are. You pick a rock on the edge of visibility, walk to it, then pick another. That is how you survive a place that keeps erasing the horizon. The fog is not white. It is the color of powdered bone and silt. It drifts in sheets, ankle high, then suddenly knee high, then gone. And each time it thickens, the valley shrinks to a small room around you. You think you are walking across empty ground. Wrong. You are walking across a landscape that remembers ice and still behaves like it. The wind is polishing and sanding and rearranging the surface as you move. It is a living conveyor belt made of cold air. Your watch vibrates against your wrist through layers, a small reminder of the calm window approaching. You try to calculate distance by time, but the wind makes time elastic. You glance toward where Canada Glacier should be. Nothing. Just a brighter smear inside the fog, like a memory you cannot fully access. Your heel complains again, sharper now, and you feel the boot rubbing through the sock. A hot spot in Antarctica is a cruel joke. Heat is precious, and your body is wasting it on damage. You stop behind a boulder that is barely taller than your knees. You crouch. You pull the radio out because ritual is what you have left. The plastic feels brittle, like it could crack if you get angry at it. You extend the antenna again. You turn your body, slow, trying to find the angle where the valley might let the signal out. You press transmit. You say your call sign, your location, your status, clipped and professional. Your voice sounds too loud inside your hood. The response is immediate, hiss, and then, layered under it, the faintest warble of a carrier tone. It flickers like a tired light bulb. You wait for the reply. Nothing. You press transmit again and repeat the message. You hold the radio higher, as if height is persuasion. The hiss becomes a little louder. The carrier tone vanishes. You stare at the screen, and you feel that old human urge to bargain with electronics. You try one more time, slower, clearer, as if the valley respects diction. Hiss. No confirmation, no repeat, no calm voice from McMurdo telling you it is fine, you are fine. Keep moving. The comm window slides past you in real time, indifferent and silent. And once it is gone, it is gone. You cannot unmiss it. You sit there for a beat longer than you should because your brain wants to pretend there is another option. Then the wind pushes grit into the side of your hood, and the moment ends.